All right, so we're just going to do a very basic programming series. This is what you would go through essentially before you do any of the other game programming tutorials, whether online or in my class. Up in the right hand corner, let's start by clicking on New Project and then select 3D Core. And then for your project name, just name it Play. And generally, I take on Unity version control because I'll save these out and I'll access them through the cloud. Now, this repository name is not available, so I'll just name it Play and then my initials, and then I'll create the project. All right, so the project is now open. Just so we're looking at the same thing, go up to the right-hand corner, go to Layout, and select 2 by 3. Let's go ahead and select a couple things. So this tutorial is just about variables. I'm gonna keep it short because the truth is, there's so many different types of variables. I'm not gonna go through it all, and a lot of times it just becomes word salad when you're explaining things. But if I can show you a couple cool things along the way as you're learning this and practicing, that's good too. Now, I have this philosophy when it comes to programming that you should try to get a deep understanding of how things fit together, the different data structures, more than just the surface understanding of like a variable or a tutorial on how to create an RPG. Like those sorts of things are cool and they're important, but you're learning more about a process there than a deep understanding of coding. So as we're like I do a variables video, go on your own and kind of do some research. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have that deep of an understanding to get a job if that's your concern or to work in the game industry. It's just going to make you better. Okay, anyway, enough of the soapbox. In our projects tab, I generally do one column layout just because it's easier for me to read. And then the hierarchy is the stuff that you see in your scene. I'm assuming that you have a basic understanding of Unity, if very little, and that's why I'm kind of over explaining right now. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to display our variables to the screen, but instead of doing it as like a hello world or print thing, we're going to actually display it as part of a UI. And I think that would be cooler because then you're kind of displaying the name of your game project or your main menu. So the way we can do that is we can create a canvas. So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to go to UI and I'm just going to create an empty canvas. And what this is it's an empty object that's roughly the shape of your camera at first. Like you can make it float over a player or whatever. So I'm going to press F like Frank or Florence. And you can see here, it zoomed out. Now I'm going to click 2D here and you can see that this is the shape or the size of our canvas. And it's in direct correlation to the game window. So if I change this to 16:9, see how that changed too? So let's just make a TextMesh Pro text box that will display our variable to the screen. So I'm going to go to UI here and I'm going to do TextMesh Pro. And right off the bat, you're going to get this TMP importer. Go ahead and hit import TMP essentials. Perfect. Now, what that'll allow us to do is have access to different things like the text. Like before, it was probably hard to see, but you couldn't see this text because the TMP stuff wasn't there. So I'm going to bring this up this way. I'm also going to select my camera just for this first and change it from skybox to solid color. And that's going to let us see our text a little better. And let's just make sure that that's our main camera, but we're just sort of looking at our canvas right now. All right. So here's our canvas. And notice as I move this, my text goes outside of this canvas. You want to make sure that your canvas is set to screen space camera. And if you want, and then you can lock your camera, you can drag your camera in there, or you can do, let's see, you can select your text and let's see, screen space overlay. Oh, sorry, canvas scaler here. You want to set that to scale with screen size, or you can set constant physical size. So if we go scale with screen size, as I go up and down, notice it doesn't change. And then I can just select my text and move it into the scene. And as I scale this down, we're not going to lose it. And that's what this does when you select your canvas. And in the canvas scaler, you do scale with screen size. So right now I just have this text. It's centered in the scene. I can scale this up or down and my text scales with it. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to create a script that's going to display like hello world or some sort of information. You can imagine that it's your level name. So I'm going to write in here, right click in here, go to create, and I'm going to make a folder. And I'm going to call it underscore script. And the reason why I'm Putting the underscore in the beginning is because it floats the thing right to the top of the assets folder. And I tend to go in here a lot. So I'm going to right click on this folder. I'm going to create another C# script. I'm just going to call this play. And I'm going to attach this play script onto that TextMesh Pro object. So I can either drag it from here by left clicking and drag it on there, or I can select it here and I can drag the script. See how I have the play script here? From here onto the object. Now I have 2 copies, so I'm going to right click and remove that. Or you can go to add component here and just start typing play. And you can see there's our play script. All right, so that's that. Let's go ahead and unpack this. And I'm going to go ahead and go up to the top here, edit, and then I'm going to go to project settings. I believe it's actually preferences. Yeah, edit, and then go to preferences. Now you're going to have an option when you go to external tools here to really select Visual Studio, not code. You don't want to have Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio, especially if you're on a Mac. Install Visual Studio for Mac. I'm using Writer, so I'm going to select that. And really, it's just a different type of editor. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to double click this and just pause the video while it opens up. All right, so let's take a look at some basics of variables. So I can go in here and I can create a public. So there's really three parts to really 4 parts to a variable. And that's the accessor, which is like public, private, whatever. By putting public in front of a variable, so we'll just call this public, and then we're going to give it a data type. This is the second part, string. That's like, you can think of a variable as kind of like a cup, and on the cup, you're like, this cup can only hold water. So you write like water on it. Well, this variable, which we haven't given it a name yet, can only hold letters or a string of letters called a sentence, or, or it could be a word. And we're just going to call this word because we're going to be putting hello world in there. And I'm just going to generally just make it equal to an empty string. So it's just a set of quotes. And then I save this. And if I go back inside of here, remember we attached this script to this text object here. You'll see because I use this word public, it made it public here. It made it so I can access it inside my editor. Now, right off the bat, you get these 2 methods, start and update. Start runs once, update runs every frame. So I'm just going to use a very simple command called print. And I'm going to grab this word here, and I'm going to place it inside of there. Now, we are going to get to where we actually add it to this new text object, but I'm just kind of taking you through the basics. So currently, word is just holding an empty string, right? And if I go in here and I typed in like hello world, which is like the generic, let's see, hello world. What's going to happen is it's going to read in word from here, and it's going to save it inside of this word here, this public string, this variable word. And then we're going to print this once to our console. So if I go to Window and I go to General and then Console or Control-Shift-C, and I press play, you'll see that it's going to print, let's push this down, hello world. So really this method here runs once, and they even tell you here, this is called once before the frame. So I'm going to uncheck play there, and I'm going to hold Alt and just push the down arrow key, and I'm going to place this inside of the update. Now update is called once per frame. If I run this, I'm going to go ahead and hit clear here, and make sure it's all cleared out, and I run this again, and honestly, so I know this is a little cramped, I'm doing this on a laptop screen. If I click stats here, you're going to see this FPS. If I press play, you'll see that this is going to give us the frames per second. And this is printing hello world. You can see the number of frames per second. So we're in the thousands at this point. And so that's how we can see it. Wow, that's great. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to access this text object here. And inside of this text object, I'd like to take this string, which is currently public. So let's see. And that says hello world, this one here. And I'd like to place it where this new text is. And so instead of word here, let's go ahead and name this to level name. Okay. And maybe our first level is called hello world. And if I save this, let's actually make sure that we copy this. And actually, I'm going to delete that update line there. We should see word inside of our viewport change to level name. You can see that here. And my first level might be called, I don't know, hello. And that was our level name is hello. Okay, so remember what I said. A variable is just a temporary storage place. So I want to create a variable that's going to store a reference to this TextMesh Pro object. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is up at the top, we have these using directives. So I want to use the API or the code that lets me access certain elements of TextMesh Pro. So I'm going to do using TMP Pro. And this is a library of code that now I can access that will allow me to access things like this box or different features that are inside of TextMesh Pro, which is this text system. And I'm going to say, okay, public, and really it could be private. And I'm going to do TMP Pro. And actually, let's see, we want to do TextMesh Pro. This one here, because that's the name of this feature here. And I'm just going to start texting. It's going to offer me some suggestions. So I'm going to leave this lowercase for now. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to save this, and you'll see right now this is equal to a none TextMesh Pro object, right? Now, watch this. If I try to drag in a game object like a camera, notice nothing happens. But if I grab this object and I drop it in here, this TextMesh Pro object, actually, you know what? I need to, this is a UI, so I use the wrong variable type. And that's why it's giving me, it's not allowing me to drag any of this object in. So I'm going to save that. TextMesh Pro UGUI, and that's going to give me access to this UI thing. Now, what happens is if I drag this into here, you can see it'll allow me to do that because it's the same data type. But what I'd like to do is to save time from always having to drag this in, and that's kind of error prone, is in this start method. Like right now, if I press play, notice that it doesn't load that in there. And it just shows up as none, and I can't access that. They have a nice nifty feature inside of Unity which allows me to get a component that's on this same script. So what I can do here is grab this variable, and I'm going to say equals get component, and the component I want to get is this object. And let's go ahead and put it's this this object here. That's this right here. So I'm going to grab that component and I'm going to store it inside of this variable. So now notice that this is empty, but when I press play, and I want to do something in a moment to get rid of this, why it's always reloading domain. Notice that it automatically said, hey, on this text object here, I grabbed this TextMesh Pro component. That's great. Now, one of the things that's part of this, notice, is this new text object here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this level name private just to kind of save space too. So now on my play here, and actually let's get it so that it's not always loading domain. So let's go to edit, and I believe it's under preferences here, and just type in reload here. Oh, you know what? I'm wrong. It's edit, I believe project settings maybe. Now let's type in reload here. Yeah, there we go. So under edit project settings under reload, scroll down until you find enter play mode settings and just check that on and leave these checked off. And when I close this now, I'm going to save it, hit Control S. It shouldn't constantly be asking me to reload domain. Cool. So we have access to this now. Now what I can do is I can say, hey, there's this text input here. And I'm just going to say, instead of level name as quotes, I'm going to name this like awesome level. So we still have this string, right? It's called level name. And we now have a variable here that gives us access. So inside a start, what I can do is right off the bat, I can say, hey, TextMesh Pro dot text equals this level name. And I'm going to save that. And now when I press play, let me hide this stats for a second. Let's see if it updates this text box here. Boom, it changed it to hello. But the thing behind it is we want it to be awesome name. And it looks like, let's see. Let's see, we have level name here, TextMesh Pro. Let's see, play. We have our play, and we have this variable here. Pro that text equals Full name. Oh, it didn't. I don't think it reloaded the main. So if I press play, there we go. Awesome level. So it updated awesome level. Sometimes it takes a second for it to recirculate this. Now remember, variables are also you can always rewrite a variable within the same structure, right? So if I hit Control D here, I can change it. It'll first write it as awesome level. I can actually add quotes here and then just say, hey, um, super awesome level. And what'll happen is because there's a thing called sequencing, super awesome level, it'll first load it as awesome level, and then it'll write over this text variable inside of here as super awesome level. Let's see what happens when I press play. And it might happen so fast that we don't catch it right away. So you can see now it's super awesome level. So first we assigned it awesome level. We applied awesome level here, and then we rewrote over that variable. So that's a little bit of variables. There's a ton of different types. Like you can hold integers, game objects, things like that. But for now, I wanted you to get a little bit more comfortable with the text object as well as um, just sort of learning a little bit about coding and variables.